playing pool, which is ruled by Libra. And also I was a champion pole vaulter. And this is a symbol of the pole vaulter's crossbar and the pole of the pole vaulter vaulting over the height. So very much the Uranus symbol. And I'll get a picture later and show you how that manifested itself in my life. But anyway, this is one of the really deep, deep secrets of astrology. And of course, astrology, as Blavatsky says, is the deepest secret of initiation. It is the highest manas, highest mental plane information available to mankind at this time. And I have no doubt about it. And not just because Blavatsky said that, I believe that it's true. I've seen it work out in my life. So I know it's true. Through what Bailey and others call the law of correspondences. These things will be proven to you. We have a solar eclipse coming up soon. And on the 8th, and the difference between the solar eclipse, I'll have to excuse myself here in a minute and I'll get a document for you that I want to read to you. Is in the length of time for the energies to manifest themselves. As I said earlier, the full moon and the full moon eclipse is a very rapid kind of timeline where things that are going to be affected by whatever the sign the full moon is in, the full moon eclipse is in, it'll happen in a relatively short period of time. Not true, not quite so true with a solar eclipse, which is coming soon. We'll be able to see about 90% of it from the Detroit area, which is it's good enough for me. Anyway, and those energies can take up to about 10 years to fully manifest themselves. And even longer. The last full moon, the last solar eclipse of the 20th century began off the coast of North America. And its trajectory passed over the southern tip of England and down across Europe, through places like Bulgaria, and ended up in southern India, around Ceylon. And you're going to have to watch her because she's going to knock that camera over, see? That's what's getting ready to happen. We get the doggy by the camera. Very dangerous situation. Anyway, so that event that happened in 1999 in August, it was 11th or 12th of Blavatsky's birthday, interestingly enough, would trigger, it was said by initiate teachers, that solar eclipse would trigger a rebirth and awareness in the study of the wisdom teachings, the esoteric teachings, whether it was theosophy or other esoteric teachers, not exclusively theosophy, but people like Steiner and the Hindu mystics and others, 20th century mystics, Alice Bailey, even Douglas Baker, my friend and teacher. There would be an activation where across this trajectory, the line of totality in all of the countries that were affected by the solar eclipse. Interesting, there are a group of my friends from England who are teaching esoteric astrology and the wisdom teachings, the other esoteric healing, esoteric psychology, the psychology of the seven rays in places like Bulgaria, Albania, Romania. So they're in that part of the world. I know those guys that are over there from the ashram that I belong to, the English ashram. And they're doing exactly what was forecast would happen, spreading the teachings. And in Italy too, I might add. Tremendous esoteric response out of Catholic Italy. I saw a thing on the news. I wanted to bring it up because it's not only the bridge factor, the Libra feature of the bridge being hit by the ship, but as I said earlier, its natural home for Libra is the seventh house. It's the house of justice, legal agreements, courts, rulings, marriage, partnerships. And a strange thing has happened just in the last 3 days. There has been a focus on a thing that we have talked about in the past, and I told you the story related to it with a conversation I had 14 years ago with Dr. Douglas Baker on the dark forces who are actively in the world at this time. We are reliving some atavistic form or type of events that existed in Atlantis 225,000 years ago. It was the Mahatma Moria who said that he had reincarnated in Atlantis 225,000 years ago to fight and defeat the black magicians who were in control of Atlantis. And one of the most common aspects or features of black magic is psychology and the misuse of psychology. Blavatsky rails about it in one of her books, where she talks about black magic and what a thin, narrow line it is for all of us to travel, a razor's edge, and that any thoughts, negative thoughts, thoughts that are divisory thoughts, hates and jealousies, it's all related to black magic. And I see it on TV. I remember years ago when I was a young kid in college, and we had a very esoteric professor who I'm still friends with to this day, mostly because of his involvement in the esoteric and how it influenced my life. And he said that he believed at that time, we're going back to 1965 and 66, 67, he said that he believed that the really potent and active black magicians in America at that time were the advertising executives in Madison Avenue in New York. Because what they're doing is they're trying to get you to buy something that you may not necessarily want or need, and telling you how good it is, and it may or may not be. And so it's a form of magic. It's a form of mind control. It's getting you, convincing you to buy their product, whether it's laundry detergent, or what are we doing with the microphone?
Well, we have to take it off because there was an issue with I think, with the microphone because we started. So we will do it next time.
Can they hear me? Okay?
They can hear you.
They can hear me. So anyway, it made a lot of sense to me. And as I've grown older, all these years later now, I see the black magic psychology in the mainstream media. The things that they tell you are as much a product of black magic as the things that they don't tell you, refusing to tell you. And it all involves the truth. You're going to either tell the truth or deny the truth. And it's black magic. My suspicions are that, and I've got to go back to the story again to kind of lay the groundwork about when Baker and I had this very intimate conversation about the dark forces and how they were manifesting themselves in the world 14 years ago. And a lot of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. In fact, it's beginning now, 14 years later, is beginning to percolate in the news cycle. So this is an aspect of the prophecy that I wanted to talk about when I originally posted on Facebook what this lecture would be. Atlantean black magic, prophecy, and really glimpses of the future. So Baker and I were talking about the externalization of the spiritual hierarchy in 2025. That's a year from now. It's a year from now. When a group of Christed beings, Buddhic, Krishna-type beings will externalize in the world. They're already here. They're kind of in low profile, I would say. And we haven't identified, at least the masses have. And they may not, but a lot of people will know them when they see them and when you hear what they have to say. So, one of the things that Baker said to me was the executives of so many of these news agencies, one of them was recently arrested from CNN, are pedophiles. And there was a thing, I don't know if anybody here saw it or not, we have in conversations, I don't think I said anything in the group about it, but in private conversations, I know I talked to Tracy about Oprah Winfrey. She was great friends with a guy down in South America called John of God.
Brazil, right?
Yeah. His number 2 man, I met his wife at the spiritualist camp down in Roanoke, Virginia, which is no longer there. There was a huge conference. You know Judy Byra?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Judy was. And this woman who was married to John of God's number, and she left. She got out of there. I don't remember her having any excuse other than the fact that she got out of there. So she must have seen or known something that was going on that she didn't like. But Oprah promoted this gentleman, John of God, one of the ladies from the Center of Enlightenment, which is a spiritualist church down in Woodward Heights area, north of Ferndale, between Royal Oak and Ferndale. She went to see John of God to get the magic healing, which of course never happened. And there was a lot of hysteria surrounding John of God. I think even didn't Wayne Dwyer, didn't he go down to see John of God? Ended up in Hawaii, but yeah, I think so. There were a lot of people that went to this. I could be wrong about Wayne Dwyer, but maybe not. Anyway, this whole thing when Baker said to me, if the pedophile issue is not resolved, the events that we are anticipating for 2025 of the externalization of the spiritual hierarchy will be delayed. And the hopes and wishes of the spiritual hierarchy is that America would be the centerpiece for this new renaissance, a world renaissance. It's part of their plan. Sometimes their plans don't work out and they have to change things. And he said that if the pedophile issue was not resolved, that the renaissance, then this new world renaissance of 2025 would take place in Europe. And there's a reason for that. If you're into the esoteric teachings and you understand what the meaning of the dweller of the threshold is, the dweller of the threshold of Europe was destroyed in World War II. Adolf Hitler, part of his assignment was to destroy the dweller on the threshold of Europe. The dweller is the sum total of all of the evil of a nation or of an individual person. And it's something that we all have to overcome. It's that loathsome part of ourselves that needs to be destroyed. In esoteric terminology, we say, so that the angel of the shining presence, meaning the soul, the higher self, can overtake the personality and the mind of the individual disciple. We're all disciples. And so when Baker told me that the dweller needed to be destroyed, and that this thing of 2025 possibly not happening, I'm thinking to myself as he's telling me this, there's not enough time to do that. That's a huge task. That was 14 years ago. Now, just in the last 3 or 4 days, we're seeing P. Diddy, who is a black guy rapper, is being arrested. And it's believed that pedophilia, child sex trafficking was at the core of what he was involved in, but not just him, others, many others. So it'll all come out, because all they got to do is get 1 or 2 of them to start talking, and the whole thing is a house of cards, and it will collapse. We can eagerly await that day when that happens, and that will be a key that will open this doorway for America to be the centerpiece of a new world renaissance, which it should be. Anyway, one of the things that I just came across yesterday, did anybody hear, I think I mentioned it to Pauline earlier, about Oprah Winfrey trying to leave America with $100 million, and she was stopped at the airport. Anybody hear that one? Okay. See, I can't corroborate that, but it wouldn't surprise me. She was very much involved with what's his name, Weinstein, probably Epstein, and with John of God, and P. Diddy and her were buddies. And so the whole thing begins to come together. It's a puzzle where the pieces are beginning to fit. And it will only take a few more pieces of the puzzle, and we'll have the whole story. DB said one time to me, it was interesting in the thoughts that I had after his statement. He said, the Maha Chohan, who is the head of the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, said that he said that one of the great concerns of the Mahachohan was in man's mistreatment of animals. And I thought to myself, well, if the Mahachohan is concerned about the mistreatment of animals, then also he must be concerned about the mistreatment of children.
Absolutely.
So you can't not be. And sometimes he would do that. He'd plant a seed, and then you'd have to figure out the rest of it. We've talked about the esoteric significance of World War II and the part that Adolf Hitler played. A lot of people don't like to hear this, but there's people who are non-esoteric people. If you're esoteric, you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. Baker said that Hitler was a subrace Manu, and it fits perfectly based on what Alice Bailey had said when she was asked about what was the cause and the force behind World War II, really World War I and World War II. And she said it was an intertribal war. And that means that it was a war within the fifth or Aryan root race. So you have 7 sub-races for each root race. And you have 7 tribes for each sub-race. So when you look at Europe and the fact that the Nazis were an expression of the 4th sub-race, and the Anglo-Saxon, American, and English, Australian, New Zealand, South African, are an expression of the Anglo-Saxon subrace, which is the 5th subrace of the 5th root race, then it all begins to make a great deal of sense. And I believe that Winston Churchill, if Hitler was the subrace Manu for the 4th subrace, that Winston Churchill was the subrace Manu for the 5th subrace. In fact, in my mind, there's no doubt about it. Anyway, food for thought. One of the things that was happening on Atlantis, a lot of times we talk about what we call atavism. Esoteric teachers talk about atavistic tendencies, how we bring characteristics, qualities from previous lives into this incarnation. And one of the things that they were doing in Atlantis, the black magicians of Atlantis, was to try to extend their lives and to try to be youthful by using the black arts for this purpose. And one of the things that they did, there was a queen in Atlantis, or wherever Atlantis is. We can talk about that for a couple of days. That this queen, Atlantean queen, was, through surgeon scientists, was able to transfer her brain into the bodies of younger and younger people, so that she extended her life and her consciousness through younger bodies. It's interesting because there have been accusations made, I have no doubt about it, about the use of adrenochrome, adrenaline, from children who are traumatized, and the most horrible stuff you can imagine, the pain that they go through, and then their blood becomes charged with adrenaline. And the movie stars, they say it's the most expensive substance in the world, is this supercharged adrenochrome. And all the Hollywood stars are trying to get it and use it. And they name certain ones. You can imagine who they are. but it's part of a black magic science that's prevalent. It's prevalent in Hollywood, and it could be maybe in world politics. I can't think of any good examples there, but certainly in Hollywood. But this is a massive display of black magic and the way it's manifesting itself in the world, and it's real. When we read the lines of the Great Invocation, one of the most important lines is, "May it seal the door where evil dwells." And I've talked to you in the past about stories about how people have claimed, I believe it to be true, that there is a tunnel system under the Atlas Mountains that may extend all over the entire world. I believe that Winston Churchill knew about it. We've mentioned it in the past. It's worth mentioning it again, about how when the Allies knew they were going to win the war, and shortly before Roosevelt died, there was a bell tower in Morocco, the site of what's the city there? Marrakesh, is that it? What is it? Anyway, one of the major cities in Morocco. And the bell tower, if you were at the top of it, you could look out at the Atlas Mountains. In fact, Churchill, in one of my PowerPoints, which we'll do in the future, had Roosevelt carried to the top of the bell tower in his wheelchair to view the setting sun over the Atlas Mountains. And it was a symbolic gesture as the sun was setting over the Atlas Mountains, knowing, Churchill knew that that was a prominent place, where evil dwelled in the subterranean chambers of the Atlas Mountains, and that evil was being defeated. And as a symbolic gesture, he wanted to share that experience with Roosevelt of symbolic defeat of the Nazi forces and the black magicians of the planet, who were defeated, but who have since risen again. And what is getting ready to happen in America with all the chaos and all the corruption and all of the confusion and all of the confused people is the dweller, this horrible composite of all of the evil of our nation, is going to be destroyed. It's coming to this, it's percolating to the surface. It's the pedophiles, it's the drugs, it's all of that stuff that's percolating up to the surface, and it will be destroyed, hopefully, and I'm sure with the cooperation of the spiritual hierarchy, so that America can once again be a true world leader, not what it presently is, but will be a true world leader, and it will open the gateways to a golden age. And what better place for it to happen than in America? So we'll see. We'll see. As Baker said, it has to be the pedophiles and the black magicians behind it have to be destroyed. And if they don't get destroyed, I don't know what's going to happen to America. And the plan will then shift to Europe. What time have we got? 10 after. So a lot of these things that these Hollywood stars are doing, these really acts of black magic, were the same things that they were doing in Atlantis 225,000 years ago. It's said that they had a form of television, the Atlanteans. And of course, there are people that say, well, they had airplanes. And there's no, we don't have proof that they had airplanes. the Hindus talk about the Vimanas, the flying aircraft that they had that were kind of shaped like bells, actually, and that they were free of gravity and that they could travel at high rates of speed, similar to flying saucers, aircraft such as that. And so they were using their version of television, whatever it wasn't what I got here in Rochester Hills or you have where you live, but it was something probably projected onto a wall. They could see, a TV-like image, a program, whatever they were watching doing in those days. Maybe something like the Wizard of Oz, who was able to project his image out to Dorothy and the others. Who knows? But they did have sophisticated forms of communication. And one of the interesting things that's being talked about is, and rightly so, and I feel qualified to talk about it a little bit, is when you study the architecture of Egypt and of India, you see the symmetry in their sculpture and the amazing, absolutely amazing work that were done by those civilizations. And the archaeologists have tried to tell us that it was done with hammers and chisels. There is no way in God's green earth that you could get hundreds of sculptors to carve as accurately with hammers and chisels the images and the pillars and the designs of those temples in Egypt or in India. You can't do it. You have to have some sort of a technology, which we have today. And I was a part of it at General Motors, where we had what we called milling and machines, and they will perfectly duplicate the symmetry of an automobile in the interior and the exterior of an automobile. And there's a machinery, and they had some kind of machinery. We haven't discovered it yet. I keep looking in the cartouches and the symbols inside the temples to see if there's any evidence of a type of a machinery that they were using, because those statues are absolutely perfectly balanced, and you couldn't do it any other way. You'd have to have some type of milling machine like we use, the whole auto industry and most industries have nowadays, where they can perfectly duplicate one half of an image on the other side, perfectly balanced. You can't do that with images. It's impossible. I was a sculptor for 40 years of my life and worked at General Motors for almost 30 years. And we did a lot of work by hand that we duplicated by hand. But the accuracy is not there that you find in the machine. But the machine doesn't have the creativity that the human being is. So it was kind of a trade-off between the two. Does anybody have any questions about anything we've talked about? Is there anybody on tonight? Did anybody tune in?
Yeah.
So if we have questions, now would be your opportunity to ask questions. I'll try to answer them. I don't guarantee it I can or will answer them, but I'm open to any questions you might have.
David,
Yeah.
where did the looking glass come from? When you talk about ancient TVs,
Mhm.
Where is the looking glass coming from in antiquity?
The looking glass. I don't know what you mean. A looking glass to me is a mirror.
It shows the future.
Oh, you mean like a crystal ball?
No, I'll email it to you later.
All right,
I can't explain it. I thought you knew.
I'm not familiar with the terminology
Okay,
that you
thank you.
use, but yeah, we'll discuss. Anybody else?
Is she talking about a remote view?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Not sure what she means. Looking glass.
Yeah.
And something looking into the future, I think is what she was implying. Yeah, I don't know about that. But I mean, those ideas have always existed. They probably did originate in Atlantis or even before Atlantis, Lemuria. The idea of prophecy and foreseeing the future, is a huge thing. Periodically, the idea of Nostradamus surfaces in the consciousness of the masses. They all get excited about what did Nostradamus say, and I don't put a lot of stock in it myself. But we're living in very unusual times, and with the upcoming eclipse, you've all seen online all the stories of the crossing of the path of totality, or the path of the trajectory of the eclipses of 2017 and 2024, and how they cross in the area of it's called the New Madron Fault. It is significant. I don't know if it could be a earthquake or something. There was a massive earthquake from, what was it, 1811 or 1812, it was around the time of the Second Revolutionary War. Very significant event. Could trigger something. We just have to wait and see. Of course, the Bible scholars, they give great significance to this trajectory passing through 7 towns named Nineveh and another town, Salem, and Rapture, Indiana, as if there's going to be, I don't believe any of that. But there may be greater significance. And one of the things that I see happening that concerns me is that the eclipse begins around Eagle Pass, Texas. And Eagle Pass has been a main infiltration route into America for illegal aliens from all over the world. And I know that's significant. And something will be done about it. And we have to wait and see how that's handled. But that is a very significant thing. The path of totality is, we're just outside the path of totality for the eclipse. And what's happening is that if you're down around Toledo or a little south, the path of totality is a band 70 miles wide. So you'd have to be around Toledo, which is 75 miles south of my house, and you'll see 100% effect of the solar eclipse, which I believe is very significant. And it may be that all of the timing of all of these events are coming together to aid the spiritual hierarchy in their efforts to destroy the work of the black magicians who are involved in the drug trade. They're involved in the sex trade, child sex trafficking, child sex pornography. They're involved in all that stuff. And that all has to be, as Baker said, it has to be destroyed before we can experience the glorious things that are promised for 2025 when the spiritual hierarchy meets in Shambhala, probably around the time of the Wesak festival, which would be in May, early May of 2025. So we're almost exactly a year. What is it? Monday is April 1st. So you're 13 months away from the events of beginning of 2025. So we're lucky that we're alive at this time, because it really and truly is a very historic, biblical. It is biblical. And I don't mean in a literal sense, but it is biblical in that it has a spiritual, a component which needs to be considered. And we'll try to do that in our next meeting, which I think will be next Friday. So we'll have another meeting next Friday. And we'll talk about the solar eclipse. Yeah.
I was, excuse me, I was just wondering about the Akashic records.
Mhm.
You know, do they, that's a records of the past,
Mhm.
but don't they predict the future also?
Yeah, certainly they do. Yeah.
Well, wouldn't they give us a forewarning of any type?
Sometimes they don't. And the reason they don't is it's initiate knowledge. You don't give that out willy-nilly. You don't give out initiate knowledge willy-nilly. There are penalties. There are penalties for giving out too much information. And they used to say in ancient Greece, the penalty is death. The initiate teachers, Socrates, Plato, they were very careful about what they gave out. I've talked about certain things here tonight there are no books, as I told them down at the Theosophical Society in Detroit. Some of the stuff I mentioned tonight you can't find in any books, because it was initiate knowledge that was given to me. I don't know if I should be giving it out or not. I did. I gave it out because it was given to me. Adolf Hitler is the subrace Manu. You read all the books in the world, nobody's written anything about it. And it's powerful stuff. And sometimes the Nirmanakayas and the masters, they'll give you a hint. And just that one hint, the 2 or 3 words that they say will open up a panorama of understanding that'll fit in all the pieces of the puzzle. Blavatsky used to do that. Blavatsky would give clues. And one of the clues that she gave was on page 500 of volume 2, Anthropogenesis, volume 2 of the Secret Doctrine. And she says in the last sentence, on the footnotes of volume 2, page 500, that astrology is one of the deepest secrets of initiation. And what happens is, in the process of understanding the astrology, is that you can look at these symbols and you'll be fed information from your higher self that'll fit all the pieces of the puzzle together. And when it comes to you, it's an incredible experience. And it's something that will be a product of the new age. It's going to happen. There's no stopping it. Whether the new age begins in America or begins in Europe, it's going to begin. And the Aquarian age is the most benign of all of the ages, because it's ruled by Aquarius or Jupiter. It's the Aquarian age, and the esoteric ruler of Aquarius is Jupiter, the most benign of all of the planets. And the future is bright. There's going to be some difficulties between now and then, but we'll get through it. And after we do, this birthing process, because it's the birthing of a new age, and the age of Pisces is dying, and the age of Aquarius is being born. So the birthing process is always stressful, and we're birthing a new age, and we can be grateful that we're a part of it. What time is it?
8:26.
8:26. Okay, well,
8:27.
8:27. Okay, so that's it for me tonight. Does anybody here have any more questions? It's a lot of information. It's a lot to think about.
But it takes 7 years to build that bridge.
5 to 7, they say.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's amazing how that happened, you know?
Well, they were talking about cyber attacks earlier in the week.
Yeah, I believe that it wasn't an accident.
No.
Yeah, we're worried about our modems and
Mhm.
then a ship runs into a bridge.
Why don't they order the bridge on Amazon? That's like quicker.
I don't know. We'll have to talk to Joe Biden about that.
Yeah, he said, he said the taxpayers will pay for it.
Yeah,
It's like,
not the insurance company. See, here's what's interesting about the shipping company. The shipping company is Mitch McConnell's wife's sister.
Chinese.
And she was recently killed in a freak accident. A Chinese woman. Mitch McConnell is married to a Chinese lady. And it was her sister that was the president of this, I think it's Singapore-based. You know, you go into that part of the world, I'll tell you an amazing thing. A lot of Americans don't know this. When I was in Vietnam, most of the business people, I had very little contact in the cities. We passed through in a truck convoy. But I know that the entrepreneurial people in Vietnam were Chinese. They were from China, and they settled in Vietnam. And Vietnam is just a peninsula of China. You know, it's all connected. One large landmass. Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, different tribes of a subrace of the fourth root base, which is the Chinese, Sino-Japanese, meaning Chinese-Japanese root base is the fourth root base. That's one of the reasons why I don't worry too much about China gaining any more power than they've already got, because they will never have the support for war, world dominance. They won't ever get any support from the spiritual hierarchy of the planet. And the reason they won't is because they're a product of the fourth root base. Okay, that's it for me, folks. I think we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But what about America then? America, what is in here of the root race? Like
What?
here, like if
Fifth
China,
root race.
oh, fifth root,
It's
okay,
founded by the Anglo-Saxon subrace
okay.
of the fifth root race. Each root race has 7 subraces.
Mhm.
Each subrace has 7 tribes. And it's so a place that where you can very easily see it is you can see it in places like Vietnam. And the different people that lived in Vietnam. I'm not talking about the Chinese, I'm talking about the Vietnamese people. And then they had what they called the Montagnards, the French called them, the mountain people. And they're physically as different as you can imagine from the South Vietnamese, North Vietnamese people, from Vietnamese people. They're darker skin, they're shorter, kind of stocky, whole different evolution, a tribe. They are a tribe of the fourth root race. I don't know what subrace, but it's one of the later subraces. And then you go up into Laos, and one of the most vivid memories I have in my mind was being in Vietnam in a really bad place. And they had flown in officers and mercenary soldiers had been flown in, and somehow my company ended up with this group of people, and they were having meetings. I wasn't a part of it, too far down the food chain. But I can remember passing by, and they had a tent set up This is up in the mountain, really rough area. And I walked by, and here were two Laotian mercenaries. And the image was just burned into my brain because I never saw guys like this in my life. They had jungle fatigue uniforms. It was the dry season. The uniforms were faded, so they blended into the dry, surrounding. They had big floppy bush hats. They were tall, slender guys. And they had these Browning, if you know what a Browning automatic rifle is, they used to call them BAR-15s, I think they were. But it's a big, clumsy, awkward. They used them in World War II. And I never saw people like that. I'd been into Laos before, but not in civilized areas on the Ho Chi Minh Trail where.
Okay, we have now past time, 8:32.
Yeah.
8:33.
Anyway, so you could see the differentiations in the Cambodian people, the Montagnards, the Vietnamese, and the Laotians, and then the Thai people. There's 5 distinct, probably tribes of a subrace of the 4th root race. And you can see it in South America among some of the tribes there. I'm talking about the indigenous people. Okay, well, that's it.
Okay. So you can,
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. How many people were on there?
well, it just goes on and off.